Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Aligned Wellness Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Tori Thompson, and I'm excited this week to dive into something that is becoming much more increasingly popular and not necessarily talked about, and that is autoimmune cases. This is near and dear to me, as in my own healing journey, autoimmunity is something that I struggled with, and even in my own wellness journey as someone that is very in tune with my body and able to really dive into the root causes and generally isn't too rattled. I will say when you get diagnosed with an autoimmune condition, it is something that does rattle you because there is no cure. You're told that you're going to be on immunosuppressants for the rest of your life or medications for the rest of your life, and that it's just something you're going to have to live with. And to me, that was terrifying because I'd come so far and was feeling so much better than to have this setback. So when someone tells you that this is something that is going to be a lifelong diagnosis, it's terrifying. And no one talked to me about what foods I was eating. No one talked to me about, hey, let's look at maybe why this is happening. When you ask why autoimmune diseases happen, they say they're genetic. They say that women are more predisposed, and they really don't give you too many reasons of why this happens. So I was diagnosed with a rare autoimmune disease called autoimmune hepatitis. Essentially, my liver was attacking itself, and it happened very quickly. I went from a normal liver to a very, very elevated liver enzymes practically in about a week's time. And so when you look at the prognosis of autoimmune hepatitis, it's immunosuppressants for the rest of your life, and in many cases, people have to get liver transplants. And after I got over the pure shock of it, I decided that that was not going to be me. I was going to manage it with supplements and food and diet, and I was going to get my liver back in shape so that I didn't have to do that, because the lifelong of immunosuppressants, unless absolutely necessary, was not the approach I wanted to take, and I definitely didn't want to start there. I wanted to see what could I do to move the needle naturally first before exploring any sort of medications, and I'm so glad I did. Luckily for me, I was able to get my numbers back in range and keep my liver healthy. My autoimmune markers are now non-detectable in labs, and so it was an amazing turnaround for me. Not all autoimmune conditions can be reversed like that, but many of them can be managed drastically with diet, foods, supplements, lifestyle modifications. So I really want to get into what is autoimmunity, right? We hear this, people talk about I have an autoimmune condition this, an autoimmune condition that. What does that even mean? So an autoimmune condition is basically when your immune system, which is there to protect you against bugs and viruses and whatever invaders we get in the body, basically gets a little confused and it actually starts attacking its own tissues rather than invaders or pathogens or foreign bodies. So there's many different types of autoimmune conditions. There are kind of some big guys that we hear about all the time. So if you have an autoimmune disease of the thyroid, we call that Hashimoto's for hypothyroid, or Graves' disease for hyperthyroid. Joints, autoimmune disease of the joints is rheumatoid arthritis. We look at the liver. In my condition was autoimmune hepatitis. We've got the gut, which might be Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis. We've got skin, which could be psoriasis, vitiligo. These are just a few of them, and these are the common ones. Again, there are so many different autoimmune conditions that people develop. The interesting thing about autoimmune conditions is, one, the majority of the people with autoimmune conditions classically have been females. We're starting to see more and more males getting these autoimmune conditions. And what's I find fascinating is generally you'll start to see signs of it well before the autoimmune condition is diagnosed, right? It takes years to develop an autoimmune condition. It doesn't just overnight happen. And the average person takes about 4 to 5 years to get a diagnosis from an onset of symptoms. Again, it's a slow progressing thing. We don't just wake up and have a massive autoimmune condition. There's generally a knock. Hey, let's wake up. Let's look at these symptoms. And they keep getting worse and worse. I think what people get hung up on is the diagnosis and the prognosis, but the body is such an amazing unit that can heal. And so I've seen time and time again where autoimmune conditions can either be drastically helped and managed or even reversed in some cases by really cleaning up people's lifestyles. So there are several possibilities of root causes for why an immune condition would start. And when we talk about a root cause, this is the deepest of layers of things that would cause some sort of issue in the body. So I have a whole podcast on things that are root causes versus not root causes. But when we look at things that are not root causes, it's things like candida or SIBO or food allergies. Those again are all symptoms of something deeper. So when we look at root causes, I would say probably the biggest one is, and they all tie in back to this one, is the gut dysfunction. There's something going on in your gut. And what that is, it depends from person to person. So the majority of your immune system, about 70% of your immune system, is actually housed in the gut. And so when you have the massive amount of the immune system in the gut, it's a pretty logical thing to think, okay, if your immune system is overactive, let's maybe look there. So we've got what's called, you've got these tight junctions in the gut. And a tight junction, imagine your fingers are locked together, and that is the wall of the gut. Keeps what should be in the gut, keeps what should be out of the gut. And what happens is there's some sort of hit to the gut that can cause those tight junctions to open up. This is what people refer to as leaky gut. What can cause the gut to open up would be highly processed foods and, high sugar foods. It can be a bunch of antibiotics or antifungals or some sort of medication that really hits the gut lining hard. It can be toxins. It could be parasites. It could be bacteria. There's some sort of hit to the gut that causes the gut to be leaky. And when the gut is leaky, what happens is what should be contained in the gut now can get out and can get into the bloodstream. And then that's when things start misfiring. What happens is the body doesn't know the difference between food or a bacteria or a toxin or whatever it may be, and the immune system goes hyperactive and starts attacking it. And so that's where we start to see people getting food allergies with gut issues. We start seeing people get sensitivities to things. We start seeing people's immune system is a little more hyperactive, and it really just comes down to the gut is leaky. Things are getting into the blood that shouldn't be, and the immune system is not firing correctly. Other things that we look at that could cause leaky gut are things like mold mycotoxins, a huge trigger of the gut, environmental toxins, gluten sensitivities, and people with celiac that can tear up your gut. And so these things all can go in and really affect the gut lining. Usually if someone has an autoimmune condition, getting their gut back in check is step one. You really have to get someone's gut back in check, get the bacteria in balance, get the gut healed up, get the bad guys out, make sure that the gut is in a better shape. So on that note, a root cause that we see a lot in autoimmune conditions is mold mycotoxins. Mold mycotoxins are going to be a toxin released by toxic mold. So there are two types of mold in the world. We have environmental mold, and this might be things that people have seasonal allergies to. This is mold that's out in the environment, not really toxic. Again, might give you allergy symptoms, but not going to harm us. Then we have the types of mold that produce a toxin called a mycotoxin. And these mycotoxins are what are harmful to us. And the way we pick this up would be a water damaged building. So living in a house with mold, an office with mold, going on vacation and staying somewhere that has mold. And then foods. Foods are a huge source of mold mycotoxins. And the big guys we look at are coffee, grains, and peanuts. These foods all can contain mycotoxins. And again, these mycotoxins get stored in the body. The body doesn't do well detoxing them. The body doesn't do well moving them out. And they all have these implications. They're all going to work slightly different. But as a whole, we're going to see that they're immunosuppressant. So they'll actually turn the immune system down against getting the body to do something about it. We see that they're highly inflammatory. They will tear up your gut. They're massively inflammatory to the body, to the liver, to the kidneys, really whatever organs they can affect. And they're toxic. Very, very toxic substances. And so in my case, with my autoimmune hepatitis, that was a huge root cause, was the mold mycotoxins in my system and some Lyme guys. But these guys are huge, especially in the thyroid guys. So someone with Hashimoto's, it's usually my first inkling is to look at the mold mycotoxin load. What mycotoxins do they have in their system? Can we get those out? And you can do that by one, removing exposure, making sure it's not something you're taking in, and two, detoxing them out of the body. So mold mycotoxins, I would say, are usually like kind of the star of the show in some cases. And then we look at stealth infections. And infections, we look at things like viruses like Epstein-Barr. We look at parasites. We look at Lyme. We look at these infections that aren't so easy to spot. They're not so easy to test for. But these guys are huge as well. We've seen viruses like Epstein-Barr been linked to MS. We've seen Lyme disease linked to MS and many various autoimmune conditions. We've seen parasites as well. All of them massively inflammatory, do hit the immune system quite hard. And the issue with these guys is a lot of them can lay dormant. These viruses, Lyme, even parasites can lay dormant, not really causing any issues for people. But your immune system is kind of in this constant state of alert. And it knows that they're there, so it's keeping itself in this constant state of alert. And again, all it takes is some sort of flare up, and now the immune system is not too happy. The next thing is looking at environmental toxins. Environmental toxins are in the panel with the mold mycotoxins, so it does make it easy to look for them. But environmental toxins are things that are out in the environment. So this is plastics, pesticides, VOCs, so things in your carpet, your flooring, your drywall. These are things that can be in our water, in our food, in our air, but they're not off-the-wall environmental toxins that no one is exposed to. These are things that are common exposures in our environment. And so we are looking at these guys, and we've seen these, they're toxic to the liver. They really tax the liver. They can disrupt hormones. Some of them are direct immune toxins, meaning the toxin itself affects the immune system. And many of them are known triggers to autoimmunity. The crazy thing about environmental toxins is we've been running environmental toxin panels for many, many, many years. And it seems like almost every year the panels get worse, and we're seeing more environmental toxins in younger people, even down to small children having pages and pages of environmental toxins in their body. And it's not hard to be exposed to these. Our cleaning products, our water, our foods, our skincare, all of these products have environmental toxins in them unless you're going way out of your way to buy products that are all natural and do not use any of these toxins. And so for the average person, they're being exposed to many environmental toxins every single day. Stress is another one that is a huge trigger, and stress in many ways is a trigger of a lot of things. Stress is very hard on the system, but when we get stuck in chronic stress, so this is, work stress, family stress, financial stress, all the things that kind of build up in our modern society, we live these high stress lives, it will really dysregulate the brain and adrenal connection. And so we get this, cortisol imbalance, we get these swings in hormones, and these cortisol swings are our stress hormone. When we get these swings in it, it can really play with your immune resistance. You see this a lot in people that when they're studying, we look back at when I was in school and everyone's studying for boards, you're kind of high stress. And, you're high stress for a few weeks leading into these exams. And then right after the exams, everyone gets sick. So this is common, right? People will be in these high stress periods, and then as soon as the stress goes away, they get sick. This is a pretty common thing, right? Your immune system after a period of chronic stress is just tanked, and it can't keep going. So then you get sick, and then, back to that stress, and we often see these cycles of it. But if you're someone dealing with high stress, it is not uncommon to see that really affecting the immune system. There's also a lot of nutrient deficiencies that we see in people with autoimmune conditions. And so we see vitamin D is the biggest, right? A huge majority of the population does not have adequate amounts of vitamin D. If your doctor's running this, ideally you want it between 65 and 90. Most people are hanging around 25, 30. Vitamin D is a big player for the immune system. And again, most people not getting adequate amounts of vitamin D. Then some of the other guys are zinc, selenium, magnesium, and B vitamins. And it kind of is a double-edged sword. Often people aren't getting enough of these, and then their gut is a mess, and that's where a lot of the vitamin and mineral absorption happens. So if your gut is a mess, your absorption is going to be down. So you're not going to get the level of absorption you should, so you end up in a bigger hole, and it ends up in this perpetual cycle of you can't get your vitamin levels high enough, and your immune system's eating them up, just trying to keep itself going. There are genetics at play, right? Some autoimmune conditions are tied to genetics. So if you look at something like an HLA gene, it might affect, how you detox mold, or there are various genetics that are tied to various autoimmune conditions. However, what nobody tells you about that is with genetics, you cannot change your genetic code, but you can change how it's expressed. And that is what we call epigenetics. Epigenetics is the expression of the gene, meaning a gene can be turned on and off, and we have the majority of the control of that. So there's about a 10 to 15% weight on the actual gene itself, but the rest of that, 85-90%, is actually in our control. This is our food, our stress, our toxic load, our sleep, our relationships. All of these factors can cause the genetic expression to either be turned on or off. So when people get hung up on that disease runs in my family, or I have a gene for blankety blank, yes, and that can't be changed. However, you can control a lot of things, and that is why it is so, so, so important to eat well, sleep well, drink filtered water, lower your toxic load, do all these things so that you can take control of the genetics to the best of your ability rather than letting a gene dictate you. The worst thing you could do is let it scare you into believing you are going to develop that. I've done tons of genetic testing on myself, and my genetics don't look great. I've got cancer genes. I've got Alzheimer's genes. Does that scare me? No, because I have the ability to do things to control that the best that I can. So I think it's good data, and I can run tests to make sure that I don't have toxins, that my gut looks good, that my microbiome's healthy, that there's no heavy metals or plastics all in my body, my food is clean, and I can do these things that I can control. So it becomes a place of empowerment. So if you're someone really struggling with an autoimmune condition, or you're worried about it, what you need to do is, first of all, I always tell people, run testing. And this testing is generally not going to be covered by your general doctor. And if you really want to look into it, it is something you're probably going to have to go down more of the holistic path. But looking for things like a stool test, what does your microbiome look like? What does the gut lining look like? What does the gut inflammation look like? Toxin testing, heavy metals, environmental toxins, mold. Make sure those guys you're testing for to make sure that they're not there. Based off that, you can remove the triggers and all of that. But then you can come up with a detox plan based off of that. So that's step one, figure out your root causes. Number two is really get your lifestyle dialed in. And where people tend to get a little bit of misinformation on this is they think that they can do this like 60-70% of the time, but on the weekends go buck wild. With these things, especially if you have an autoimmune condition or you're developing one, it is really a go super strict 100% of the time for a while to get it back in check. But really pulling the inflammatory things out of your diet. So that may be gluten, dairy, soy, sugar, alcohol, caffeine, really pulling these things out, eating a whole food diet, protein, fats, fruits, veggies, eating that way to really reduce the inflammation so that you can get your gut in a better state while you work on these root causes. The second thing is getting all your products cleaned up. And my next podcast is actually going to be on product replacements in your home for this reason, because it's not something I can just hit on, because there's a lot of greenwashing that goes along with it. So what maybe appears to be a clean brand really isn't. So removing the toxic products. And the reason that's so important is these environmental toxins in our home are something we're exposed to a lot. So cleaning up your cleaning products, your personal care, so your body wash, shampoo, conditioner, makeup, all of that. Drinking filtered water. And that is something that I would say is probably the most important thing for people, is drinking filtered water. Your refrigerator filter doesn't cut it. Your Brita filter doesn't cut it. It needs to be good filtered water. Don't buy plastic bottled water. It needs to be filtered water that you are filtering yourself. And then, you can go down the line of, getting rid of your plastic Tupperware and getting rid of your cutting boards, and you can go down all of that. But starting with personal care, water, cleaning products is a big one. Then it's diving into the gut and really starting to work on focusing on healing the gut, getting the gut to repair. So there's, you can use supplements to start to repair the gut and bring inflammation down, but you really do have to go in and clean it up, figure out, are there parasites, mold, bacterial overgrowth, fungal overgrowth, what is going on in the gut. So really address the gut. We need to support the body. So bringing your minerals up, bring all of your drainage help up. So supporting the liver, the kidneys, the lymphatic system. So really diving into that piece. When you're really trying to move things through the body, support is essential. So really going in and supporting that. And then nervous system regulation is huge. And this can be things like breath work, meditation, prayer, getting outside and putting your feet on the earth and grounding and getting sunshine on your body. Very simple things, but can make a world of a difference in terms of how your body responds to stress. You're never going to get your stress to zero. It's just not going to happen. And anyone that tells you that, just reduce your stress. It's not going to happen. You have to get your body to be able to just get out of that high stress state faster so that you don't live in a state of chronic fight or flight. If you can get it where you can, get your stress down to the best of your ability and then get your body to where it's able to go into a relaxed state, that really helps it move forward. And then it's getting the foundations in check, right? Getting your sleep dialed in, getting your foods figured out, getting that dialed in, getting your exercise figured out. But with this, it takes time, it takes patience, it takes just little baby steps. But the main take homes, get your diet dialed in, figure out your root causes, whether that's mold, parasites, leaky gut, environmental toxins, heavy metals, but figure that out and work on that, and then rebuild the body, rebalance it, right? So you have to heal the gut and bring everything back, get the adrenals back in check, whether the thyroid was affected or your hormones, but get everybody back in check so the body can get back to a state of balance and start figuring itself out. If you're someone that has been diagnosed with an autoimmune condition or disease, please be your own advocate. A lot of times, no one's gonna come help you. No one's gonna tell you that you need to look at your gut or you need to look at mold or this toxin's been associated with that, or that your diet has anything to do with it. But do your research, be your own advocate, because it can be managed. In some cases can be reversed, but it does not have to be this scary thing that you have zero control over. Let's try to get your body as healthy and as strong as it possibly can so that you have the best chance of managing it and managing these symptoms so that it doesn't affect your day-to-day life. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you next week.